News was just announced that WNBA TV ratings are down more than 50% since Caitlin Clark's injury. And it was also reported that the Indiana Fever television viewership is also down over 53%. Now, I know a lot of us were expecting some sort of dip since Caitlin Clark has been out with injury, but I don't think all of us were expecting the entire viewership of the entire WNBA.
Look, the WNBA just got a brutal reality check. Without Caitlin Clark, the whole thing feels like watching Netflix buffer forever. Playoff ratings didn't just dip, they nosedived. It's like your phone dying at 1% right before midnight. Fans aren't tuned in, and the ones who are, they're either falling asleep or changing the channel faster than a bad reality show. The big question is, are fans gone for good, or are they just watching pickleball instead? Either way, these playoffs have turned into a mess with more drama than a reunion episode of Love and Hip Hop.
Guys, today, is there any chance that the WNBA, that Kathy Engelbert saw some of the ratings that I'm about to show you now and said, hey, Indiana Fever, can you do us a favor? Can you do us a solid? Can you just tease a Caitlin Clark return, kind of boost these up a little bit? Can you just dangle a Caitlin Clark return in front of the fans' faces, try to boost these ratings up a little bit? There was one matchup that this league can consistently rely on to produce massive viewership number.
This season was hyped up as the breakthrough moment for the WNBA, the year the league would finally step into the spotlight and prove it could compete with the big dogs. But instead, it feels like the whole thing completely collapsed, like a faceplant straight into a giant bucket of nacho cheese. And the worst part? They're trying to spin it like this was all part of the plan, when in reality, the momentum just slipped right through their hands.
A shocker. Imagine my surprise. Just imagine my surprise when Uncle Casey found out that the WNBA is struggling to maintain their ratings without Caitlin Clark. To make matters worse, and this is something I have definitely noticed in the last 3 or 4 weeks, especially since the All-Star game, the WNBA seems to be struggling to maintain interest.
Let's be honest, this WNBA season has been nothing short of a chaotic disaster. For anyone who tuned in expecting quality basketball, what they got instead was a wave of injuries and officiating that often seemed like the referees were wearing broken glasses. To make matters worse, the commissioner continues to treat player health as if it's just an optional concern. And if you were watching purely for entertainment, chances are you tuned out the moment Caitlin Clark started spending more time on the bench than on the court. Her ankles practically became public property, with defenders treating her like a human crash test dummy.
When I think about Caitlin Clark, the operative word that comes to my mind is gratitude. There's an incredible level of gratitude that should be accorded to this young lady with what she did for the sport.
How was the attendance for Team USA in the Olympics? What would it have been like if Caitlin Clark was playing on that team? Remember the first game? Look at this right here. National broadcast viewership. What are we talking about here? 1,000, what is that? 1.219? Is that the number? And the game afterwards got 485,000. So the Fever in their game against the Minnesota Lynx was 1.219 million.
You know things are in rough shape when the most exciting storyline of the season isn't about the games, but about whether the entire league will collapse before the playoffs even end. That's how bad it has gotten. And here's the spoiler. The league is barely hanging on. It's being held together by what feels like a single strip of duct tape, practically begging fans, please don't notice how terrible this really is.
The WNBA's black superstars should thank their lucky stars for the record ratings Caitlin Clark is detonating, even if new fans are mostly white fans. It doesn't matter what color eyeballs are. But the other day, I must admit, it hit me like Katie Bell Henderson telling me that's enough. I told myself it's not racist for me to like Caitlin.
And speaking of how bad things have gotten, let's talk about the officiating this season. The referees honestly look like they were recruited straight out of a mall food court during the lunch rush. One of them seems like they're still chewing on a slice of pepperoni pizza while deciding on a flagrant foul, while another looks like they accidentally showed up thinking they were officiating a roller derby. The consistency? Somewhere between a Magic 8 ball and a fortune cookie. In one game, a blatant shove gets ignored. In the next, someone sneezes too hard and suddenly they're ejected. If the refs had their own stat line this season, it would read, turnovers, 0, bad calls, every single possession.
The WNBA has a problem, and that problem is Caitlin Clark not playing in WNBA games. Now, what all does this affect? The ratings are plummeting. Guys, there's ratings for a couple of these games that are eye-poppingly.
Now let's talk about the injuries because, oh boy, this WNBA season looks less like a basketball league and more like an orthopedic surgeon's Christmas wish list. Caitlin Clark has spent way more time recovering than actually playing, mostly because defenders treat her like she owes them money. Every time she drives to the basket, it feels like another episode of How Hard Can We Smash Caitlin before the ref finally notices? And apparently the answer is harder than you'd think. But Clark isn't the only one taking a beating in this basketball apocalypse. Sophie Cunningham, who was supposed to be one of the league's shining stars, the kind of player you put on posters as the face of the future, is now out for the entire season.
That's not a trend that the WNBA is excited about. That's a trend that Kathy Engelbert would say, hey, Fever, hey, Lynn Dunn, hey, Kelly, hey, Amber, can you guys start dangling that Caitlin Clark return like you used to do? You know, before Caitlin Clark gave a statement and you guys were hands off? Can you guys, just string them along a little bit more? We want to get these ratings back up. We want to get these numbers.
Sophie Cunningham is basically waving from the injury list like she's starring in a brand new show called Sophie's Torn Something. And honestly, you could almost hear the commissioner's office breathe a sigh of relief. Like, oh good, one less star player we actually have to market properly. But if Sophie's injury wasn't bad enough, Angel Reese decided to check out altogether. She quit mid-season. Normally that would be a shocking headline in most sports. But in the WNBA, it feels more like a commentary on the state of the league itself. Because let's be real, if the commissioner can't keep things running, if the refs look like they're auditioning for clown school, and if players keep dropping like flies on a sweltering July afternoon, then why wouldn't someone decide to bail? Reese probably figured she'd rather spend her time on Instagram than risk another game where she gets tackled like she's trying out for the NFL.
At Indiana against the Chicago Sky. Right after that game, they opened an investigation once again into the fans where they found nothing, but the damage had already been done at that point. If some of these things happen just one time here and there, or there's one certain media personality who's just always saying these kind of things, then whatever. I feel like fans as a whole can be like, okay, whatever, this person is just a hater. But this is something that has happened over and over and over again. And over time, it starts chipping away at how much you're going to actually care and want to support an organization if they continue to do things like.
Here's the thing. None of this is happening in a vacuum. The WNBA has been begging for years to be taken seriously, to get the spotlight, to finally be treated as more than just an afterthought. But the truth is, the league isn't doing itself any favors. The commissioner seems completely allergic to protecting players. It's as if enforcing rules and protecting stars is just too radical of an idea. Seriously, imagine if the NBA let LeBron James get body checked on every single possession without calling a foul. The league would collapse faster than a cheap camping chair. But in the WNBA, that's just another Tuesday night. And speaking of collapse, let's talk about ratings, because this is where the comedy writes itself. Early in the season, when Caitlin Clark was still playing and still standing upright, the numbers actually spiked. People tuned in to see if all the hype was real. For a brief moment, it worked. ESPN pretended to care, highlights actually made SportsCenter, and Twitter suddenly filled up with people acting like they knew what a pick and roll was. But the second Clark went down, the ratings dropped faster than Angel Reese's interest in finishing the season. It's almost like the WNBA learned the hard way what happens when your entire marketing plan is built on one player and your refereeing plan is to let her get punched in the face. Now, sure, some fans will argue this is just a rough patch, that injuries happen and fouls are part of the game. But come on, this isn't bad luck. It's bad leadership. The commissioner has been sitting back like a substitute teacher who's completely lost control of the class. Instead of fixing problems, The league just doubled down on ignoring them. Star players dropping out? No big deal. Referees making games borderline unwatchable? Don't worry, the fans will stick around. Spoiler alert, they didn't.
This Caitlin Clark thing, man, I mean, it's embarrassing. It is embarrassing what you guys have done. And then people are catching on to your tactics. You got the people on Twitter catching on to your tactics. Like, look at this right here. Look at this right here. They say ESPN didn't want to show the ratings were down from WNBA All-Star Game because Caitlin Clark didn't